Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen, here on this Wednesday, October the 9th, 2019. I can't believe we're this deep into October. It is 4 p.m. New York time. That's 1 p.m. in Los Angeles, 9 p.m. in London, 5 a.m. in Tokyo, 6 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. But wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I am very happy. Well, I'm unhappy that Cindy Chavez can't join me today, because that's always fun, because we always talk about Neville. Wednesday is always Neville Day, and so we love talking about Neville Goddard. But today, Daniel Mangena, who visited me last February at the recommendation of Steve Rowell, who was then co-hosting with me, has agreed for a return engagement. And I will preface this by saying Dan is one of the most insightful law of attraction coaches I have ever talked to. He gets right to the point quickly. And by quickly, I mean like in a sentence. That's about as quick as it's going to get. So, Daniel, it's great to have you back. How you been? I hope you're doing well.
Thank you for the accolades. I'm not sure how I'm going to live up to those now, so I'm centering and bringing the head down. But thanks for having me.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. Take your time. You know, you have all one sentence. I already gave you one sentence, right?
Brilliant.
But no, it was true. When you came on last February to fill in for Steve, because he had a prior commitment that kind of got in the way at the last minute, and you were very kind to step in. And that was, I don't remember what the first question was that I asked you, but I remember that the answer just skipped. I think it was actually an audience question. It just skipped all of the possible discussion and went right to, let's go to the root of the thing. Like, whoa, all right.
You know what it is? It's that one of my pet peeves, we might say, is the fluff that... Let me back up. Okay. Sometimes we need a little more color to see the picture in its fullness.
Sure.
And sometimes we just need to see the lines.
Mm.
And my feeling is that sometimes we get so caught up on the color that we forget about the picture. And for some people, the color becomes the thing instead of the picture itself. It's like one of my keynote topics is called the pointlessness of purpose. And the reason why I speak on that topic is because we get so caught up on finding purpose and what it means and meditating on it and giving it the right logo that we don't actually go and do it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true. We get caught up in all of the window dressing and we forget about, what's the topic again? Oh, yeah, that's right. Oops. But it's all good, and I'm hopeful we're going to actually get a couple of questions perhaps from our live stream audience. Our live stream audience is very, very tiny compared to the overall podcast audience, but we have a few regulars, and I see one of them is already here. Jeffrey is like, if we have a show without Jeffrey, it's not a show. That's how regular he is as a listener.
I think if it's the Jeffrey, I think it is. I think we're now friends on Facebook, and he's the...
Is that right? Okay.
Gift King.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. Yeah. And I'm seeing somebody else who actually logged in, I think, for the first time a show or two ago. And this person's also saying hello, so great to have you with us as well. I'm sure a few of our other regulars will traipse in too as time goes on throughout the show. But I just want to get the conversation started about something that's been out for a while. Your book. You have a book that has a very interesting title to it. And I'm sure there's a story behind it. So I'm not even going to announce the title. I'm going to let you announce the title and tell us, what's the impetus behind it? How did it get started?
My most recent book is called Stepping Beyond Intention. And it's essentially it's my baby. I've been giving birth to that for the last 11 years, which is a story in and of itself.
I think most doctors would consider that to be a record when it comes to a pregnancy. But
yeah, definitely. But the book really steps into my model, Beyond Intention, which is the 4-step model that I created to empower us to get control of the choices that we make, get conscious of the choices that we make. So it takes us through the 4 steps of Beyond Intention. It takes us through the mechanics of how and why it works and some things that we can do with our choices and how to set effective intentions. So it looks at setting the scene. Okay, what are our intentions and how can we set them effectively? And then how can we actually unfold those consciously and deliberately in our lives? And it's interesting because I had thought about writing a much bigger book and making it really colourful and all of this stuff. It's like, well, we could just get to it.
You were anticipating my interview with you. That's what it was.
Yeah, basically. Came in about 30,000 words. My last book, The Dreamer's Manifesto, was like 12,000 words. Oof. You can read it in an hour and a half. I'm not really interested in words for words' sake. I really just wanted to give people a practical guide that they can pick up and get on with. So, yeah, we got bestseller, which was really fun.
Fabulous.
I'm a little bit obsessed now with having like a Wall Street Journal or something bestseller. The paperback comes out. Right now it's on Kindle still. The paperback, I think, will be out next week. It'll be available for paperback.
Very good.
The audio book will be ready at some point this month. That's being produced right now. So
very cool. I do have one question, though.
Sure.
How can you be a little bit obsessed? I mean, isn't obsessed like a binary state? You either are or you aren't?
I say a little bit because I'm trying to minimize it for myself and feel a bit better about the level of obsession that I do have.
Okay.
I was up late. Gosh, when was it? Not too long ago. I was up late, really late, understanding the numbers and whether it's possible. Oof. So, yeah.
Well, then we appreciate you being here even more now that we know that. So, and we'll do our best to help you keep your eyes open. So,
Thank you.
Rest assured, you're not going to fall asleep during the show.
Thank you. I'm sure the questions will do that.
Well, it's not just the questions. I mean, we keep things really light around here. And as a result, I mean, if you get out of the show laughing less than 25 times, I failed to do my job.
Brilliant.
Okay?
We can't laugh and sleep at the same time.
Well, we can, but it's not easy.
And not as much fun either.
Any stand-up comedian will tell you they have their own stories about audiences that went right to sleep. So it is possible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But we do have some commentary coming in. I don't know if we have any questions. Well, actually, we do have one question. This is an interesting question, and I think it's more directed to me than to you. But the question is, no, I'm sorry, it's not a question. It's a statement. It's a statement, so that's not a question at all. That's okay. What happens a lot is our live streamers actually tend to chat among themselves.
Okay,
so when I'm trying to extract questions, I'm trying to dig into what were they talking about as I'm explaining it, right?
Brilliant.
Yeah. In fact, well, for instance, Jeffrey pointed out, yes, we're small, but we're powerful. And he says, yep, GIFs don't fly on YouTube. Like, okay, well, that's fine. It's fine with me. That's cool.
Well, we honor your Facebook game, Jeff. We honor your Facebook game.
But I don't really see any other questions coming in here. Let's see. Oh, well, actually, there's one here. Lava 777 says, I wish you would speak more about spiritual stuff. Now, we do actually talk about spiritual stuff some, but it's a good idea to bring that in some. So, well, let's go to you first about that. Talk spiritual for a minute.
Well, that talks to what I said to you in what we said we're going to speak about with the alignment piece.
Well, that's true. It does, doesn't it?
So it actually speaks to it quite greatly because the next talk that I'm working on right now is one called Stop Meditating.
Stop meditating. Now, that's not something you hear very often from a law of attraction coach or any kind of self-help coach. That's usually like last item on the list, stop meditating. That's like, okay, you're done.
This is. So let's go to the alignment piece for just a second. Because as far back as we're going to go with ancient wisdom, they're going to speak about different levels of density that we operate in, of which spiritual stuff is just one piece.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And what I've been witnessing in the current climate of mindfulness and Go Team Yoga, blah, 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 is that people are really obsessed with the spiritual stuff
mm-hmm.
and not taking care of the rest of it. So my call...
The rest of it being what?
The rest of it, mindset and action.
Oh, yes. People do tend to skip that part, don't they?
They skip the action.
Yeah.
I'm just going to meditate on it, or I'm just going to go to yoga about it. I'm just going to pray about it, or I'm just going to read and learn.
Mm-hmm.
The three pieces. So when I speak about the flow funnel, which is something I go into in my book,
mm-hmm.
we speak about the fact that creation requires all things to be in alignment. The spiritual stuff, the mind game, the mental stuff, and also the things that we do and say in our daily lives, they must all line up together.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about the spiritual stuff, my Stop Meditating movement is really a call to people to stop getting so obsessed with that one piece that we forget about the rest, and remember that there are other pieces to the puzzle that must be in alignment for anything that we seek to create.
It's a valid point, because I think a lot of people, probably even, I'll dare to say a majority of people who do meditation or other kinds of processes, the favorite kind that I like to talk about a lot is mirror exercises, but it's essentially the same kind of thing, forget that they are all connected and tend to kind of compartmentalize their lives. Okay, this is the time I'm going to do my meditating. Then I'm done with meditating. I'm going to go on to, this is the part where I drive to work, and then this is the part where I'm working at work, and then this is the part where I go home. We compartmentalize pieces of the day, and we forget they're all connected.
And bringing the energy, there's a great power in bringing the energy together. And instead of spreading our energy out and compartmentalizing, allowing a flow to happen that remembers that everything really is the same thing, energy vibrating at different frequencies.
That's right.
So when we're doing the spiritual stuff, we're merely engaging with that level of density that's still the one thing. When we're doing our visualization exercises, when we're doing our mental rehearsal, when we're reading and expanding our belief systems, we're playing with the same thing, energy, but just at a different level of density. And then when I'm taking inspired action, when I'm choosing to follow through and choosing to show up as the person who I'm intending to be and who I've done the meditating on and I've done the visualization on, then I'm simply playing in the same energy, just at a level of density that I can engage with my five senses.
Right.
And I bring all of that in and then add a clear intention at the front end that I've consciously set into play, so that my spiritual stuff is in alignment with that clear intention. My visualization, my mindset work, my belief systems that I'm expanding into are clearly in alignment with that spiritual stuff and the intention. Then I'm acting in alignment with the beliefs that I've expanded, and then following through on the spiritual work that I've done, having set a clear intention. That's when stuff starts showing up.
So that was a necessarily long-winded way, which is kind of unusual for you, but it's kind of a long-winded way of saying it. Let's see if we can condense it. How do we break it down into something really, really simple?
And that's what the flow funnel does. The flow funnel becomes choose, feel, see, and do. That's it.
Yeah, that's about as simple as it's going to get. You just took 150 words and condensed them to 4. That's pretty darn good.
But yeah, that's what we do. We choose. We set the intention. We choose. I mean, we're always setting intentions, whether consciously or subconsciously. But we're consciously choosing. We're disrupting. We're choosing the intention. And we feel it. That's when we do our spiritual work. Because all the spiritual work really is about getting that spirit, that energetic body, our spirit, our feelings, our emotional state in alignment with it. See, am I able to experience it mentally? If not, then I don't believe it's possible and I'm not going to be able to create it. And then do. Act in alignment. Choose, feel, see, and do.
Interestingly enough, the person who raised the question said, there's a particular person that taught me about spirituality, an Amtrak conductor from Philadelphia, and I'm thankful for having him in my life. How about that?
Wow.
That's fairly unusual.
Go Amtrak.
So you take a train trip and you get spiritual enlightenment all in the same trip. That's pretty darn good.
Train on the train to somewhere.
Yeah, that's very cool. But the thing that I think a lot of people run into, and I had run into and experienced this myself, is in fact I even saw a post about this just a few days ago. Is that we start trying to do these processes. You know, okay, we don't really have the habit going yet, so okay, we're going to be really dedicated about it, and we're focused, and yes, we're doing our thing, and then we drop it and go on to the rest of the day, and then we start contradicting it, and then we go off to do something else, and now the vibration's going in about 5 different directions, and we lose track, and then we got to get back to it, and we start getting manic about it, but the thing hasn't shown up yet. Oh no, let's start keeping score because it hadn't shown up. We just get so befuddled by the whole process, partly because we're not used to it, but partly because meditation at first seems hard to us. It just seems hard. And I think it's primarily because we spend so much of our effort keeping score. Okay, I'm going to do my meditation. Okay, where's the result?
The analogy that I love to use on that is planting a seed and then digging it up every few hours to see.
That's right. Exactly.
Rather than watering it. And so the thing that came, I think I was doing a Facebook Live or something for my Facebook group the other day, and it was or was it? No, I did a webinar on Sunday. That's what I did. I did a webinar on vision boards and mind movies. I said, well, we pick the seed, or we choose the fruit that we want to see, or the flower that we want to see. We plant it. We then water it, and then when it's ready, we harvest it or pick it. Mm-hmm. We don't pick it up every day. Or the subconscious intentioning is just randomly picking seeds and then complaining at the end when it's, I wanted bananas, but this is a mango. Ah!
Yeah, right.
Pick the mango seed, plant it, give it the right nutrients, plant it in the right soil, water it, tend to it, which is the action piece, and then when it's ready, you harvest, as opposed to, okay, I planted the seed. Okay, I checked it yesterday. Let me check it again.
But I put it under my microscope, and it's still not sprouting.
Why is the microscope not making it grow? It's in the soil.
And there's also the fertilizer, the nutrients.
Exactly.
We forget about that part too. What's the fertilizer really can't do its work if we're constantly studying the seed.
It must be in the soil. It must be in the soil.
Yeah, it's a frustrating thing. In fact, I think I saw somebody posting about how this whole meditation thing wasn't working for her because things weren't working in terms of attracting what she'd wanted to attract. The things weren't showing up, and she was getting burned out over it. I thought that was an interesting comment. She was getting burned out. And so when you made your comment about meditation, I wondered, I wonder what Dan's going to think about that one.
Well, this is the thing. When we get to the nitty-gritty of it, the mind never fails to create that which it sets out to create, the subconscious. So we've actually never failed at manifesting or creating a single thing.
Right.
We just perhaps weren't conscious of what we were creating and didn't consciously choose it, but we did choose it. There isn't an auto-teller happening here. There is a request that's being responded to and becoming the experiences that we witness in our lives. So if she's witnessing that she's not creating it, that means that on some level she's still creating the non-thing, which unfortunately we don't like to own sometimes because it means that we can't blame everyone or anything. We can't blame the person that taught us the meditation. We have to own that the meditation was the only thing and that the meditation can only line up with the intention. And then the intention can only be made manifest in our lives as long as we believe it's possible. And if we believed it was possible, then we would witness and experience it. And if
we can't blame people anymore? Really?
Sadly not. It's an inside job. Sadly not.
No kidding. Yeah, in more than one way. Yeah.
But, if she's getting burnt out, and that's possible.
Sure.
She's expending a lot of energy doing that. Yeah. And the emotional drain of having a hope set on experiencing something and not experiencing it is going to pose a drain that is going to make her feel burned out at some point. This is why I often say to people, take a step back from the creative process sometimes, because trying to push when the scene isn't set to receive the thing because the beliefs aren't there, what have you. Or when I say to people to micro shift and take those baby steps in what you're creating, and they say, but I need $1 million now. But going for the $1 million just is burning you out. Why not go for a small amount and then start to build up? But there we go.
Actually, on that same topic of money, somebody posted recently along that line of, I can't seem to manifest any money. And my immediate reaction was, you have manifested every single dollar that came around in your life. And he wrote back like, wow, I never thought of it that way.
In my Micro to Millions program, which is program that I've got that is the money-based one, but really it's not really money-based. It's about being abundant, which money is just a reflection of. But in Micro to Millions, I said the other day, the second that you start being more grateful for the smaller amounts is when you start to open up the gates to the bigger amounts. And it's really interesting because earlier on in the program, we had people that were manifesting the smaller sums, and they were like, yeah, it's not happening fast enough and blah, blah, blah. Whereas actually, when we let go of the obsession with the time, we then are no longer a slave to time, and that's when things can happen in the now. But when we're so caught up in the when, we end up being locked in slavery to time, into the time illusion, and therefore become subservient to the laws of time. Whereas when we let go of that, then flow can start happening more instantaneously.
The one I like, and this is one that I've done many times, unfortunately, is where you decide, okay, I'm going to let go. I'm just going to let go of those results. I'm just focusing on enjoying. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good right now, and I'm just going to stay with that feeling good thing. And I stick with it, and I stick with it. Okay, so where's the result? Now, tell me honestly, have you ever experienced that?
I do, but I've got a really cool hack that we give our clients to use in that one, because all that's happened is you've just basically fallen from grace, as biblically you describe it. But the really cool thing is that the second that you're aware of the fact that you've done it, you can just get straight back on the horse.
Exactly right. Yeah, I like that.
You can dissolve any disempowering effect of that moment or two that you spent out of alignment by simply recognizing that that's done and consciously setting the intention just to come back into alignment. Because the effects of anything that's happened in the past can only have a say in the moment if we carry it energetically into the now. So if we don't bring in, oh my gosh, and the shame, and oh my goodness, I've done that, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, cool, that's done. Thank you. Have some gratitude for it. And if you can't be grateful for it, this really cool trick I learned the other day, just intend and wish that you were grateful for it, and you get exactly the same energetic signature. Come back to the present moment and keep going. And that's
Interesting idea. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, that's it. It's a hack. I call it unmanifesting.
Unmanifesting?
Yeah,
okay.
Because sometimes we go off and start manifesting something we don't necessarily want.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But by taking the plug out of the
right.
energy and awareness and just coming back to the now, it no longer has any power to be birthed. That's when you dig up the seed and throw it away.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's the clean version. It can get much nastier than that.
Yeah, but
let's see. So we got a lot, as usual, we have a ton of discussion going on here, and I'm going to just kind of do a little quick thing here to see if I can spot any questions coming through. Mostly people just sharing their viewpoints and some really interesting commentary with each other. So I don't see any questions going on there. So I'm just going to, wait a minute. About the money thing. You know what, guys? It's always like this. Many people dream big things, but don't realize that they have to make little steps to go forward. Everyone wants everything right now. What do you think of that?
Everyone has to make small steps forward if that's their belief system.
Aha! Oh, like that.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to Micro to Millions, I had one guy. I always find him to be the funniest example of anyone that I've ever worked with, because he got involved in the program just off the cuff. He's like, I think he saw me on something. He's like, it was around the time that we launched. He got involved. And then when he got involved, the Facebook group started and everyone started talking about manifesting. And he's like, oh my God, what have I done? I've bought into this program. I don't know anything about manifesting. I'm like, this program isn't about manifesting. It's about creating. But relax. He's like, oh no, this person's talking that they saw it in the field. What's the field? What field are they talking about? And he went into this real big panic. I was like, dude, just relax, take a deep breath. The program is designed to baby step you. Completely relax. Anyway, so first and foremost, a couple of days later, his business partner turns around and says, here's $25,000 to invest in our business. Within days, this had happened. We I don't even think we did the first intention setting. I think I just sent them off to play the money game. That's when I first started sharing the money game publicly with people.
Wow.
So that happened. And he's like, okay. Then people that owed him money just started calling him up and paying back money. Randomly.
Nice.
Then he found out that he was part of a $4 million class action lawsuit.
Oh my God.
And then within 6 months, his business was making $100,000 a month or $100,000 every couple of weeks or something stupid like that. And he's like, wow. Dan, I'm cool now. I don't need to do the program anymore. I'm like, I don't think you need to either. Because it's designed to take you all the way to $1 million plus. But he was like, I'm really happy here. I'm really, really happy here. And I'm like, bro, you're the MVP. Now, for him, it didn't take a long time. We're talking about within days, weeks, and within a couple of months, his numbers were very, very big.
And clearly he had some anxiety.
He had anxiety and he had no experience with what was going on.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because sometimes people that know the least have the least expectations and therefore have the least mental junk getting in the way of the experience. I mean, I've got some great results. You know, one guy's at 500,000. Some people are still just getting into stability. Everyone's at different places.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Some people are just getting their debts clear now, and they've been on this since January. Some people are starting to get surplus and starting to make investments, and some people are just sort of been making sort of 1 or 2 steps every month or two. But everybody's moving at their own pace, and their pace is always going to be dictated by their belief about what is and is not possible.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say to this person is, if that's their belief and they're happy with it, cool.
Yeah.
If it serves them, cool. I will never tell anyone to go into the work of changing a belief unless they're ready to go into the work to change a belief. And if the belief isn't disempowering and it serves you, carry on. But note, and this is for anyone else listening, you do not have to be held captive to someone else's beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And someone else's beliefs is going to dictate their time and not yours. And your time can expand and shift if you're ready to put the work in to shift and expand those beliefs.
Now, when you say work, I know that people who are familiar with this topic, as most of our listeners are going to understand that that's a form of spiritual work. A lot of people, though, are going to think, oh, my God, I have to go do a 9-to-5 job. I have to really go work at this every day. So talk about the work. What kind of work are you talking about?
The work of creating alignment is what, when I say the work, I'm talking about the work of creating alignment, which is getting into the habit of being deliberate in what you're intending and creating on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. So stepping into the driver's seat of what you're actually setting out to create, the blueprint that you're sending out on a regular basis. We do that disruptively through intention setting. And with my model, we then overwrite the overriding system, the autopilot. So the autopilot starts moving in that direction too. So we're long-term and short-term. Then we're talking about doing that work to actually have dominion over our energetic body, which is going to affect our emotional state, our feelings, our ability to move things, our ability to quiet the mind, and so on and so forth. So the spiritual work of it. But then also, for me, I'm talking about the inner work in terms of the beliefs and the mindset too. So what are you consuming? What are your inputs? Are those inputs in line with the experiences that you say you want? Or are you still watching depressing stuff and having conversations with people and listening to music that makes you feel really crap? What inputs are you feeding to the mind? And are those supporting the expansion that you want to see in your beliefs? Are you spending time cultivating the vision of what you want to experience? And then the work physically is following through with that.
Isn't it interesting, too, how often people who know this stuff will end up feeding, what are you calling the inputs, I think you're calling them? You know, feeding themselves inputs that are directly contrary to what they're trying to do because they enjoy them, or they're kind of fun, or they're entertaining, or, you know, whatever it might be. There's a lot of reasons for them. But And I've noticed I do it at times, too, without even recognizing that I'm doing it. It's like, oh, my God, what am I doing here?
Actually, on that topic, I went to go and watch a really, really powerful channel called Paul Selig. When did I go there? I think it was last month or the month before. He had an event in New York with Aubrey Marcus, who's a podcaster, who I hadn't had any experience with before then, but since now follow him, he's got some great stuff. And he spoke about conscious folly, I think, is the way that he just something to do with conscious, but folly that you're engaging in consciously.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you're listening to a particular album and it should traditionally make you feel depressed, but you're stepping into it in a space of consciousness, then you can observe it as a witness and enjoy it as a witness versus being in it, right? So I love movies. There are certain shows I like to watch, but there's sometimes when I see the trailer and I can just feel energetically it's just not pulling me in a place. The Joker, I think that's going to be an amazing movie. I love Joaquin Phoenix. I think that they're going to do a great job with it. But as I watched the trailer, I didn't like how it made me feel. Now, if I'm prepared to do the work of setting my energetic boundaries and having my mindset clear that I'm detached from it energetically and just witnessing it, fine. But at that point in time, I actually was falling into flow of the rhythm of it. And therefore, I chose not to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what you essentially said there is that we have tons of opportunities to come our way of deciding, do I like this? Does it feel good? And if not, am I going to set the right boundaries for it? It's not like there's any lack of these opportunities. They show up 100 times in a day. I mean, they just are all over the place. So the real question isn't, are the opportunities there? The real question is, which ones are we going to pick? Because we can't pick them all. There's just too much coming through. You have to kind of pick and choose. Some people call it picking your battles. I call it just picking what you like.
Exactly. Spending time. And one cool thing to always remember is that because we live in a series of multiverses, every single conceivable outcome that you could ever think of is actually happening concurrently from the quantum physics perspective. And so you don't have to chase after everything. Just choose what feels good now, because guaranteed there's an alternate dimension where there's a version of you that likes the other thing and is enjoying it. So why not just focus your attention on what feels good to you now, and then pick what feels good now.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really, really like about the Abraham Hicks teaching, because they just cut it right down to that thing. How does it feel to you? Does this feel better? Does it feel worse? Does it feel better? Does it feel worse? Which makes things so much simpler than other approaches that I know about, just because we're dealing with so much stimuli, especially now. I mean, compared to, say, even 20 years ago.
Yes.
The amount of stimuli.
10 years ago, even.
10 years ago. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just accelerating crazily. And when you're dealing with that much, if you don't have a way to filter out the ones that you don't want to deal with so you can focus on the ones you do have to deal with, I mean, you're just lost. I don't care if you believe in law of attraction or not. You're just lost.
But this is a cool thing. This is where the spiritual stuff comes in. And I'm using the word spiritual stuff because I think that's just great spiritual stuff.
Okay. Spiritual
stuff can give you a relationship with yourself wherein you can start to be more discerning in what feels good. So, for example, one of the modalities that we use with our clients to build their archetype models is something called human design. And human design gives a really cool roadmap in how you process energy, but it also can give you an optimal way that you can make your choices and feel into things. So I'm a sacral generator, which means that I can feel into what feels good to me in the moment based on a sacral response. How does it feel in my sacral center? But I've developed a stronger relationship with my sacral center through certain types of meditation and through my yoga practice. So now I have a much clearer connection to the voice of my sacral center, and that allows me to tap in more closely to what is going to feel good and what's optimal for me in the moment.
Well, that, interestingly enough, ties in very nicely to a question that's been raised.
Hey.
And here's the question. Let's see if I can find it, because it's scrolled up here kind of quickly. Okay. Same person who asked the previous question says, I've got another topic. What do you think about learning disabilities? And the example given is dyscalculia.
So I've got Asperger's, which is a form of autism. And people refer to Asperger's as a disorder or like a disease. Whereas I'm like, hey, I get a lot of wins from my Asperger's. I know families that deal with non-verbal autistic members of the family, and I know people who are a lot more apparently on the neuro the neurodiverse scale than me. It's a lot more Asperger and a lot more autistic than me. And the thing is that everybody's having their own dance. If we look at this, if we get a bit more deep now and go to the soul level, right? Everyone's got their own dance that they're having on this adventure in these meat sacks that we call our bodies. And our play with the adventure has more or less flavor depending on what's going on. And so, first and foremost, a lot of these disabilities, like learning disabilities, we have to look at what the yardstick is. The yardstick is the government says you have to be able to do this exam or be able to read this. But that's, again, if we look at life holistically, just one piece of the puzzle. Someone may not be the best reader, but have the most beautiful mind for art. Richard Branson is dyslexic, still made a few $1 billion, right?
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. Stevie Wonder, blind, listens to the music that he's made.
Oh,
he couldn't see party with his eyes, but he can hear.
He's one of my favorite musicians.
And he can move. So, my personal view on what people refer to as disabilities is it's, at some level of consciousness, a way of spicing things up. My personal view. Does that make things more challenging for the individual and those around them? Perhaps. But at the end of the day, none of us are getting out of this alive, so just have as much fun as you can with what shows up.
I like that too.
And that's where I sit with it. So I believe that there's something more spiritual going on and a little bit more interdimensional. And I actually plan on, I don't know if I spoke to you about the documentary stuff that we're doing into next year. Yeah, I'm doing on that and working with getting the production team together. But one of the questions that I would like to explore is the whole phenomena of autism and Asperger's, and whether there's something more going on at an interdimension level, and going to meet some shamans and holy men and thought leaders and see what they've got to say on the topic. So that's a question that I plan to explore from my own personal experience. But yeah, in terms of learning disability, look at the yardstick and ask yourself, what more is there that they do? That we all have something to contribute to the tapestry of the universe, which is what my last book was all about, The Dreamer's Manifesto. And I don't think that anybody has anything less than anybody else to contribute. It's just a matter of seeing it against the backdrop of the full orchestra, as opposed to, that person just playing a triangle. Well, that triangle has something to add to the symphony, I think.
I agree with you. In fact, and a number of times we've talked about people with disabilities of various kinds here on the show. But I'm going to make a point that I don't think I've made in the past. Maybe I did. I mean, there's so many shows I can't remember. But yeah, so many shows. So many shows, so little time. But I'm not sure the word disabled really applies.
Okay.
I say that because everybody has different strengths. Everybody has different tool sets. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have my tool set, are you disabled? See, I think that's what's really going on with the whole disability conversation. I'm going to label you as disabled because you can't do something that I expect you to do. Well, that doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it really makes no sense at all. Basically, that's saying, if you can't live the way I want you to live, there's something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. Like, no. That just doesn't work.
It's just more threads on the tapestry.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. Whereas if we understand it as different people having different skills, different, like you say, different ways to contribute, I thought that was a beautiful way to say it. I was absolutely blown away when I saw the movie about, and I'm not going to remember her name, Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin is actually autistic. She's on that end of the Asperger's syndrome. But through the support of her mother, who basically had no help because Temple was born in like the 1960s or something like that. So this was way before there was any real understanding of this stuff. Her mother just was determined to raise her as if she was normal. And just to teach her as if she was normal, dealing with the fact that she couldn't handle stuff. Certain kinds of things, but just insisting, setting ground rules, setting boundaries. You're going to do your studying every day. You're just developing habits and so forth. And in the process of doing that, Temple was actually able to learn how to be a regular communicator with people in ways that other autistic people could not do. So as she learned how to interact with the non-autistic world, she found ways to basically be a translator for people with autism to people who don't have autism.
Oh, wow.
And there's actually a movie about her. I think it's called Temple Grandin. It came out probably 15, 20 years ago, something like that. And it's the story of her life. One of the things that I just loved from that movie, she ended up working in the livestock field and developed much more humane ways of handling and processing cattle into meat and so forth. And there's one scene from the movie where she goes to visit her, I think it's her aunt and uncle on a ranch someplace out in the western part of the U.S. I don't remember exactly where. And she approaches a gate. Now most ranches have like a cattle gate that opens so that vehicles can pass through and so forth. And there was a cattle gate there, but the way they filmed it, they showed her understanding of the gate, which was as the gate swung, she could see the angle of the gate versus the post changing as it was opening, and they're drawing that as like a mathematical diagram on the screen.
Got it.
And I was saying, wow. What a way to understand a gate. I mean, I see a gate. I just see a gate. She's seeing this whole mathematical structure opening up. And I'm saying, wow. And she's disabled? Really? I feel disabled compared to her.
It's just the measuring stick, man.
That's all it is. Yeah.
I'm going to take a look at that film. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that movie, definitely check it out. I would say it was groundbreaking for what I'll call the autism Asperger's spectrum movement, for lack of a better term. She basically, literally opening doors was a theme in the movie.
Okay.
She was afraid of doors.
Okay.
And one of the big deals for her was learning how to go through a door.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that going through a door had not just a physical meaning, it had a spiritual meaning, because passing through a door meant growing. So literally every time she went through a door, she said, I went through the door. And she did it excitedly. I'm thinking, wow. I mean, how many people have that level of insight about something that's a very simple metaphor? So, yeah, that's if you want to understand what I'm talking about, I think you already get it. But if anyone wants to understand what I'm talking about, watch that movie. You'll get a different feel for what disability is, and you'll realize disability is not a word that really applies at all. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, I don't think I've ever said that on the program before. So, let's see. Do we have any other questions coming through here? Oh, does mindfulness make your life easier? Are you happier because you practice it? And what's the outcome of it when you do it?
I had a really interesting thing that came into my inbox this morning, which said, unless the happiness was there at the point of setting the intention, it won't be at the point of receiving it. So if someone's going into something from the space of lack seeking, then you won't find it, because you planted seeds in a field of lack. And so there will always be something unfulfilled. I would offer the way to approach mindfulness and anything that we're seeking to create or bring into our lives is that we're adding to ourselves, recognizing our perfection and wholeness in the moment, and expanding more deeply into that wholeness and perfection from the 0 point of perfection of the now. Can it make you more happy? It can expand the happiness in your experience, but it can't make you happy.
Right.
It can offer you the opportunity to tap into more happiness. Yes. But if the happiness isn't there, or you can't see the happiness because you're waiting for that thing to save you, then you're setting yourself up to fail.
It's an interesting thing, because when I think of the word mindfulness, I think of that as being in the moment. But the moment that you're thinking about mindfulness in terms of a future result, you're no longer in the moment.
You're no longer present.
Like, well, wait a minute, what happened here?
Yeah, mindfulness is beautiful. I think that's what they're calling spirituality now anyway. It's the popcorn phrase.
Oh, is that the latest buzzword for it? Okay.
Mindfulness practice.
Oh, well.
I meditate.
I'm so snooty now.
But approaching mindfulness, spiritual practice, intention setting, whatever it is, going into it, recognizing that this is a new moment, and by staying in that, the beauty of that new moment as I move through the activity, move through the action, then you get to witness the fun and play of the whole thing, as opposed to, I must receive happiness from this adventure into mindfulness. What is happiness indeed?
You sound like a Shakespearean actor. That's great.
Thank you. But those are my 2 pennies on it. My 2 cents.
I think that's great. I think you hit the nail on the head there, to be perfectly honest. So, yeah, very good. Do we have any other questions coming through here? He thinks of you as Ralph Lauren, or she thinks of you as Ralph Lauren. Okay. That's cool.
The funny thing is,
Jeffrey. I'm not sure. Well, somebody here is Ralph Lauren.
I'm actually wearing a Ralph Lauren top.
Oh, that's where it is. Okay. Well, for those who aren't quite sure, Ralph Lauren is actually Daniel Mangena. So that's how you know. Okay. I don't really see any other questions there, so I'm just going to continue with where I was going with it.
Let's go.
So, like going back to the example of the person who had that tremendous breakthrough, and all of a sudden all the money started coming into his life. And I'm speaking as one who, I think everybody has one weak point. People who've been studying this stuff, like I'm really great with relationships, and I'm pretty darn good with body healing, and I can even influence the weather. For me, the weak point is money, and everybody seems to have that one weak point. Joel Elston, who does the Thursday podcast, or has been lately, he's had been kind of on hiatus because we've been shifting schedules around. But he talks about how he has clients who multi-billionaires who can't get their relationships straight. It's like there's this one weak point. And so when you talked about the guy who had this big breakthrough, first of all, anybody who has the monetary weak point, that sounds like, oh, okay, sign me up. Where do I find the course for this thing, right? But the second thing is, why do you think we have a weak point? That's really where I'm going. Why is it that there's always this one thing that always holds us back?
Here's the thing. Here's my feeling on this. If we were perfect, I think we would have transcended the confines of humanity and be in the ethers.
Probably true. Yeah.
Right? And when we look at this again, from what the conversation is in relation to soul-based stuff, generally speaking, the conversation tends to lean towards there being a particular adventure that we incarnate to experience, or one thing that God created us in order to witness and observe in play and action. A lot of my work is in creating a holistic, rounded off life. So we open up accepting membership for the mastermind for the January start. I think November, we do that. But one of the things that we're looking at in the mastermind is getting beyond abundance in our health, relationships, and our money. So not financial, like I do with Micro to Millions, or with health, which some people do, but no, let's establish a balance. And as we establish the balance, do so from a space of play, and understanding that rounding the thing off may mean that some things are ahead of others. So, for example, sporty people, they may excel a little bit more at soccer than they will at basketball, right? Sure. Or cricket.
Right.
But they're still a sporty person. So if they become less obsessed with, I must be equal measures of all sports, and actually just enjoy the fun of playing sports and recognize that some sports are stronger than others, then the stories that create the pain and suffering around not being so good at some things and others starts to dissipate. And the funny thing is where we place our attention, where we place our energy, which is one of my teachers, Dr. Joe Dispenza, says, when we take the energy away from what we don't have and focus and shift it to what we do have, that starts to expand, and more of the fun and play, the adventure, the joy, starts to become more the prevalent experience that we have in our lives. And so even when we are having those relationship challenges, for example, because I'm the opposite to you, for me, it's the relationship, interpersonal relationship.
Oh, really?
That's where I have to put the most attention at the moment in my life in terms of expanding and but I don't get obsessed with that, because if I do, all that's going to happen is the challenge is going to become the prevalent thing in my mental environment, and therefore more of what I'm creating subconsciously. So instead,
that's right,
I focus on abundance as a whole and enjoy the beauty that I do have in my relationships, and lovingly play with expansion into those areas where I want to see more growth.
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
Right. So doing it that way. So anyone that's finding money to be a challenge, if you run, so add me on Facebook, I want to be on your program, I'm probably not going to accept you, because if you're coming at it from a space of lack, it's not going to be of service to you, and I'm not interested in people's money when it's not going to serve them. And number two, if you're not approaching it understanding that it's not about the money, it's about the ability to create alignment on command that actually brings the results.
Yeah.
That's what really matters. So whether it's relationship, whether it's health, whether it's your energy levels, whether it's stopping smoking, whether it's getting to the right career, no matter what it is, what it comes down to is, number one, being very clear on what that feels like, not what it looks like, what it feels like, because that's how intentions are actually set. The words that we write down really is what matters, is the feeling that they trigger within us. That's how the creation guided system works. Being able to connect with that and having enough dominion over our energetic bodies or energetic level of experience so that we can command how we feel about it, which is where the spiritual practices come in. Being able to visualize and experience it mentally, and then showing up every day from a space of love and expansion as if it's already happened and not from a space of lack.
Yeah.
That's the formula. Whether it's money, whether it's health, doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with that. In fact, the point about feeling being such a big key portion of the overall puzzle, is a topic that Cindy Chavez and I have discussed as we do our Neville Goddard discussions. Without getting into what Neville teaches, the point that we like to make and talk about, and I'm curious what your viewpoint is that feeling. We usually think of feeling in terms of emotional feeling, or how does it feel inside, that kind of thing. But we also like to remember that feeling also involves our five senses. So I can feel with my fingers. I can also feel by hearing something or seeing something or smelling something or tasting something. I mean, they're all part of the feeling process. And so in essence, I should probably be expanding this to all 5 shows that I do each week, but on Wednesdays, feeling is about 6 senses. It's the 5 senses plus emotional feeling. I'm curious to know what you think about that.
Well, I think it's great that we're looping that into the conversation here, because what's important to understand is even when we're talking about the different levels of alignment as we have been, these things aren't happening in a linear fashion. It's expanding and contracting all in the now. So all of these pieces are all part of the self. And so all of these pieces come into play, and all of them should be in alignment with what we're setting out to experience. So what I'm consuming through my senses, where I'm directing my senses attention-wise, and where I'm directing my inner scape, should all be in alignment with what I'm choosing to create. Otherwise, I'm Otherwise, I'm sabotaging myself and creating the disconnect that results in not experiencing what we've chosen, not manifesting that which we've set out to manifest.
Good point.
Not being the frequency that matches that which we're seeking to attract, which is what the law of attraction really is all about, the law of vibration. It's being the frequency of that which we want to experience.
Right.
And that is, how does the version of me that's in that experience, how do they feel? What do they believe? And what are they doing? The second that I match that here, I line myself up with that experience, and then I can have it and witness it with my senses. But it requires bringing all of that in, including what we do with our senses, what we do with our mind, what we do with our hearts, what we do with our thoughts. Bringing those all into alignment is what allows the change or the creation to happen.
That's a nice way of describing what I'll call the holistic experience. That basically takes all those pieces, as you call them, and pulls them all into one large piece.
That state of being.
It's a state of being, yeah. Well, it's also more than a state. It's a dynamic of being.
Yes.
It's being in action. You mentioned the idea of coming into this life with certain intentions. And I actually wanted to ask you a sort of a corollary question to that. What do you think of the concept of a soul contract? Do you believe in soul contracts? Do you think they actually occur?
Contracts can be broken. So my thing is this. Any time that anybody, and there's some very famous authors who I completely disagree with what they teach, and I think it's quite sad that they're teaching it. I won't name names, but if my friend Rochelle's watching this, you know who I'm talking about. Every time my friend Rochelle starts quoting this person, I'm like, throw them in the bin. The one thing that God cannot do is be less than itself. The one thing that infinite possibility cannot be is constricted. The second that we start constricting infinite possibility, the second that we start limiting God, God is no longer God. And so the second that someone says, I had to do this because of this, this, and this, I automatically shut down. I no longer can listen to anything you have to say because you've literally described something that's completely out of alignment with the truth of reality, or the truth of creation, which is that we live in a universe of infinite possibilities. An omnipresent, omniscient, omnipossibilis reality. And so
you invented a new Latin there. I think that's pretty cool.
So the second that someone says, I have to do this because of my soul contract, I say, okay, so when does free will come into it? Where does choice come in? And the fact of the matter is had a soul perfected itself, then it would no longer need to incarnate. So you're depending on something that is not infallible in order to commit to courses of actions that your experience may actually add wisdom to. So soul contracts for me, do I believe that they exist? I didn't up until I did certain levels of learning. I realized that I was calling them something else. And so, yes, but contracts can be broken or they can be fulfilled and therefore don't need to continue.
What's the other thing you were calling them?
I didn't have it like a name. It was just like basically soul's intentions.
Okay.
Type thing. So
yeah, that's reasonable.
That's it. So yeah, soul contracts, do I believe that they are true? I believe that I don't have at this level of consciousness sufficient information to doubt and refute them, and therefore I'm open to the possibility of them being true.
Yeah.
But I cannot accept that soul contracts can constrict infinite possibility, because then we're saying that infinite possibility is an infinite possibility.
Yeah, I hear you. I actually struggled a little bit with the concept of soul contracts until I finally realized soul contracts are like almost everything else. Probably, I say almost because I'm kind of hedging my bet a little bit, just to be safe, just in case it's not truly everything else. But I think everything else that we use to describe this stuff in the various conversations we have on the overall topic, they're all metaphorical. I really don't think there are any that are not metaphorical, and I consider soul contract to be another metaphor. I
agree with you, and do you know what? I'd even go a step further. I'd say, and this actually popped up as you're speaking, time isn't real anyway.
Yeah.
We exist in a series of snapshots, or quanta if you're a physicist, within which a contract exists or does not exist based on your acceptance of it.
Right.
And so, regardless of whether a contract is real or not, because time only exists for us to experience things at this level of consciousness, the second that we step out of that and above the senses and step into fourth and fifth dimensions and beyond, then the thing that makes the soul contract even have the power of time disappears and therefore isn't real. And so I'd say, yeah, we could call it a metaphor. We could just say it's something that exists in the now as and when we choose to have it in the now. But as the author and creator of our lives, we can choose to let go, move beyond, or even write out or even fulfill a soul contract at any time. It's a matter of choice, and having the sufficient skills or the sufficient experience to work with those different levels of consciousness and cancel that out, I think.
I think you're right. It reminds me of something that the fiction author Richard Bach once said. You can take the pages as they are, you can rewrite them, you can tear them up, you can scribble on them if you want to. The point is, it's your tools. You get to decide how you're going to use your tools. You get to decide which tools you're going to use. So if soul contract works for you, great. And if soul contract doesn't work for you, great. It doesn't matter. The point is, does the tool work for you? You know, if I need a hammer and I pick up a wrench and the wrench doesn't really hammer well, I'll put the wrench down and I'll pick up a hammer.
Brilliant.
This is not a difficult concept.
But I think people, and I know we're running low on time, so I'm not going to be long on this, but I think it's important for people to understand that a lot of the time, the choices that we're making about what we allow to hold us back is simply a reflection of the fact that we're not ready to move forward.
That's true. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing at all.
But own it, and then you can try and make the choice of whether to transcend it or sit with it or not.
Which is why I wish we had another hour, because you mentioned my favorite word of the week, which is acceptance. And we could do an entire hour, I think, on acceptance.
Well, accept is step one of beyond intention, so we can have lots of conversation on that another time.
Well, then I'm going to have to just broach the possibility here. Can we have you back?
I'm always ready to come back. Just let me know when.
Then let's work that out. Let's figure out a time. We'll have you back, and we'll start getting into acceptance.
Well,
that's that first step, because I love that topic, especially this week. We actually did a show just entitled Acceptance. So, yeah, this is great.
Brilliant.
Before we go, I want to remind people who are not yet subscribers, please become one. Very simple to do. You can find us on almost certainly all the major podcast platforms out there, and even many of the minor ones. But if you can't find it for whatever reason, just go to our homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and right at the top of the page, you will find instructions for your particular device, so you can subscribe, and within 3 or 4 clicks, you are following us 5 different shows a week, and every show is different, and every show is wonderful. And feel free also to check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search on LOA Today podcast videos and click the little bell after you subscribe, and you'll get notified every time we're going live stream, so you can be part of our live stream audience or just check the replay afterward. But whichever way you come, I do hope you become a subscriber. Our numbers are increasing. We're not huge yet, Daniel, but we're up around 350 per episode, so we're doing better and better and better.
Nice.
Things getting better and better. Hey, I learned about... I think it was a half year ago, that the average podcast of all topics has an audience of around 135. So I figured, oh, great, I'm above average. How cool.
I'm a podcaster, and I use the podcast a lot. And actually what the consultant I've been working with said is that if you have 300 or more, you're actually probably in the top 20 for your topic.
Is that right? Really? Wow. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
I'll forward you the email.
I can tell you that from the moment that I started the podcast, which was a little over 7 years ago, just celebrated the 7th anniversary of the show, I had only one yardstick. Was I having fun? And I've always hit that yardstick. So,
That's
to me, the numbers are just gravy. And I'm loving it. I love the growth. But thank you so much for spending your time and sharing your wisdom.
It's been my absolute pleasure.
Really appreciate it. We're definitely I'm going to be in touch. We're going to figure out, because openings happen. So when they happen, I'll give you a call. We'll figure something out and get you back on here.
Sounds good.
Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks to our live streamers for their conversation. And thank you especially to our podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye.